Good morning, everyone. Welcome. What a beautiful day. Welcome to Newburyport's second annual Indigenous Peoples Day event. We are so pleased and grateful to be here today. My name is Christine Malpica. I'm a community organizer, director of Imagine Studios, and a public historian. And it is my distinct privilege and pleasure to welcome you here today. There are so many people that were involved in this event. I could be here for an hour naming them all, but I won't keep you here. We will be thanking people more from the stage later on today. I would especially like to thank the Unitarian Universalist First Religious Society, Maura Flynn, Cynthia Walsh, and Reverend Rebecca, wherever they are. You can wave. I see Maura back there. For all of their tireless work. They were a partner organization in this, and they've done incredible work to make this day possible. I also want to express gratitude to Mayor Sean Reardon, who is here with us today. We're very honored. And city planners Andy Port, he's somewhere around here, and Jordy Bining, who could not join us today, as well as Christine Jackson, the mayor's assistant, and Richard Jones, Chief Bradbury, and others who have made this day possible. I want to acknowledge with gratitude and respect our local Indigenous elders and leaders who have helped create and consecrate this ceremonial circle today. Chickie Red Dawn Dobson, wave to everyone, Chickie. Chickie is our local elder and has done so much. I couldn't even start to tell you how much she has been part of this day, making this happen. And John Price, wave John. They've contributed the flags that you see here today and so much else. And Onega Wea, Gary Whitewolf is here today. Thank you, Gary. He spent all day yesterday here setting up this circle. And we also want to acknowledge these incredible works of art by sculptor Joseph Gray. I don't know if Joseph's here right now, but he spent hours yesterday bringing these incredible sculptures. He's an Abenaki sculptor, and his work is also on the Clipper City Rail Trail. So if you like what you see here, take a walk and you'll see some of his other work as well. We also want to acknowledge the Massachusetts Center for Native American Awareness, who is a big part of supporting this event. Thank you so much, Bern Stanley. We also have Patricia Rocker here with us today from the Wampanoag Nation, and she is representing the Mass Center for Native American Awareness. She's over there, I see her. She can wave. And please go and visit the table and do whatever you can to support the MCNAA. They are an excellent organization doing very important advocacy and education work all throughout Massachusetts. There are so many reasons to be grateful as we gather here on these beautiful Indigenous lands on the banks of the Merrimack. We're thankful for the weather, for the community, and the opportunity to build cultural bridges, educate, and to honor Native peoples, and acknowledge Newburyport's official adoption of Indigenous Peoples Day. How about a round of applause for that? Yes, so last year, the city officially adopted the resolution to change the name of Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, and that's a lot of why we are here today. You may have noticed the lawn signs all around the circle. We are on Indigenous lands. This is true not only here, but anywhere on this continent, which was and continues to be home to a diverse array of Indigenous peoples for tens of thousands of years. It's only in the last 500 years, of course, Columbus and the Europeans arrived here on the banks of the Merrimack, or Molodamak in Abenaki, the Algonquin language, which was spoken by the Pennacook and Pawtucket peoples, who once called this land home. The archaeological record shows that Native people lived here for at least 10,000 years in this area, where they planted, fished, hunted, and lived in small villages of kin groups along the Merrimack. The great Pennacook Sagamore Kankamagus called the Molodamaki River one river, great many names, to describe all of the villages from the mouth of the Merrimack up to the area of Lake Winnipesaukee, where the Pulios, who I'm going to introduce in a moment, are from. And it was his grandfather, Pastor Conaway, who first welcomed Europeans to the coast in the early 1600s and made possible some of the earliest land exchange, allowing settlers to live here, as well as treaties of mutual alliance and aid. This at first was based on the concept of the common pot and sharing resources. His kin, the Pawtucket Sagamore Masconomet of Agawam, was the first to paddle out to reach the Arbella, and John Winthrop when he paddled into Agawam Bay in 1620. And Masconomet, like many others, welcomed the English to trade and settle here and make alliances. And his son, John Winthrop Jr., signed a deed in 1638, which granted most of the lands of what is now Essex County to the banks of the Merrimack in what is today Newburyport. At first, these relations were friendly and mutually beneficial, based on reciprocity. Soon, of course, this began to change as European disease, the need and greed for land led to dispossession, hunger, debt, poverty, war, bounties, forced relocation, and acculturation policies, eugenics, boarding schools, foster care, and so on and so on. The history of Native peoples of the Northeast has largely been erased by these and other processes of settler colonialism, which continues today. Despite all of this, and against great odds, Indigenous peoples, including the Abenaki, Pennacook, and Wabanaki peoples of the Dawnland, were resilient. They have persisted, and they are still here today, including many who are here to celebrate with us today. We are so grateful to our Indigenous partners and participants, and hope you will take some time today to meet them, to learn, to share, and to build bridges. Many of our Native presenters will be speaking today about the significance of Indigenous Peoples Day and making important land acknowledgement statements. The first of these, who I am honored to welcome, are Paul and Denise Julio, the Sagamo and Sagamo Squaw of the Kawasuk Band of the Pennacook Abenaki people, who have historical and contemporary ties to Greater Newburyport. It has been my pleasure and privilege to get to know Paul and Denise and work with them on several public projects. Paul is an Indigenous historian, lecturer, and founding member of the New Hampshire Commission on Native American Affairs, where Denise currently serves as vice chair. Denise creates coil, bark, and woven baskets and produces traditional ceremonial clothing. Together, they serve as federal religious advisors, affiliate faculty members of the UNH Native American and Indigenous Studies minor. The Pulios are also founding members of the Indigenous New Hampshire Collaborative Collective and recipients of the UNH Platinum Sustainability Award for Community Building. They were also named as one of the Nature Conservancy's 60 individuals and organizations that have positively impacted the natural world in honor of the 60 years of conservation in New Hampshire. They also serve the greater community on several state and regional alliances that deal with race, equality, food insecurity, sustainability, education, climate change, social services, and justice related to marginalized and BIPOC communities. In February of this year, the Pulios collaborated with filmmaker Catherine Stewart to create Swimming Upstream, Indigenous Environmental Justice for Our Waterways. The short film featured historic and scientific information related to the Great Bay in New Hampshire. As Pennacook cultural historians and educators, they are also involved with many public initiatives connected to the Merrimack River and the region's Indigenous history and contemporary memorialization projects. This includes their work with a coalition of local and state representatives, conservation organizations, and others who are working to raise greater awareness around monuments and historical narratives, including Hannah Duston statues in Boscawen, New Hampshire, and Haverhill's mayoral task force on the Hannah Duston statue. The Pulios have generously donated much of their time, historical, and traditional cultural knowledge to consult with the city of Newburyport on creating a new public memorial to acknowledge our city's rich Indigenous heritage, scheduled to break ground next year as part of the expanded waterfront park. Very exciting. Yeah. This Indigenous Peoples Place will be a significant historical project which will serve as a community and intertribal gathering place and space of lasting legacy to recognize Newburyport's Native heritage, past, present, and future. This unique project will be a milestone and a model for other communities to follow, and a beacon of hope for the future where all peoples can come together in peace and greater cross-cultural understanding. We are immensely grateful to the Puglios, to Mayor Sean Reardon, City Planners Andy Port and Jordy Vining, and other officials for their support of this project and their participation in today's opening. This is an important reminder that Indigenous people remain vibrant today and are still contributing to the contemporary cultural fabric of this and other communities. Thank you so much, and please welcome Paul and Denise Puglio.
Denise Puglio, Sagama Squaw, Wood-Delawasin, Paul Puglio, Sagamo, Kawasak Band of the Pennacook Abenaki people. Niona Ayan Odanak Nipi. Hello friends, my name is Denise Puglio. I'm the head female speaker, and this is Paul Puglio, head male speaker and Grand Chief of the Kawasak Band of the Pennacook Abenaki people. We came to you today from our ancient Pennacook village of Odanak-Nipi, which translates to the village at the narrowing of waters, located on Lake Winnipesaukee, now known as Alton, New Hampshire. We began by singing Ndakina, which translates to our homelands. Thanks to our ancestors, thanks to the great creator.
We typically begin all events with a land acknowledgement and stewardship statement. Today we will finish with that statement, hoping that we will briefly discuss now will provide a greater insight and a deeper understanding. Currently, here in the United States, there are 574 federally recognized tribes, another 630 in Canada, with approximately another 250 tribes pending recognition in the U.S. alone. Each tribal group has a different religious views and practices with one common core belief. Mother Earth.
Does that sound better?
Mother Earth is sacred and needs to be protected. We can in no way speak for all tribes across this nation, but we can only speak on behalf of our own people, the Kawasak Band of the Pennacook Abenaki people.
We want to openly acknowledge that in a few short minutes we'll not be able to dismantle all that has been misrepresented throughout the generations, but hope that each one of you will leave here today and continue your personal education to improve your misunderstanding of Indigenous religious and environmental beliefs and practices. Let's begin by stating some uncomfortable facts. For 13,000 years, Indigenous people lived on Ndakina, our homelands, following Creator's law by developing sustainable lifeways to maintain the purity of our environment. In the late 15th century, European expansion occurred under the guise of religious persecution. However, these religious settlers displaced the hunted indigenous inhabitants in order to steal the lands. The United
States was formed and established claiming religious freedom for all. However, the indigenous population in the United States were never specifically, and in fact they were exclusively, removed from the Declaration of Independence. and even referred to as savages within the document. In 1823, in the Johnson versus McIntosh case, the United States Supreme Court ruled that the Roman Catholic papal bulls would become law of the land in an attempt to justify ongoing indigenous land theft and the suppression, destruction of indigenous people, families, and communities. The doctrine of discovery is a concept of public international law established and promoted by the Roman Catholic Church in European monarchies in the 1400s, all to legitimize the colonization and domination of all non-Christian lands outside of Europe. The Supreme Court still upholds and codifies and reinforces that determination today.
As a result, for the last approximately 500 years, Indigenous land stewardship practices stopped, and mainstream society has been deliberately flooded with misguided information, images, and perceived facts about the Indigenous lifestyle, customs, and religious belief system. This deliberate propaganda attack was specifically designed to diminish the humanness of the Indigenous population and to appease and sanctify colonial greed, theft, and environmental abuses occurring throughout this nation. How many people here know that the original inhabitants of these lands, the Indigenous population, were not granted U.S. citizenship until 1924, and didn't receive the right to vote in every state until 1962. Then in 1978, with the passing of the Freedom of Religion Act, for the first time since colonialism, we were granted the freedom to choose our own religion, granted access to some of our historical sacred sites after forced removal, granted freedom to worship through ceremonial and traditional rites, and allowed the use of and to maintain possession of objects considered sacred, sacred items like the drum and rattle you just saw being used here.
The first issue we always have to combat as Indigenous peoples is that we're warlike savages without morals. The truth is that we had a highly evolved matriarchal society that lived in harmony with the natural world and our surroundings. These sentiments are supported through the writings of the early Jesuits in the 1600s. The Jesuits studied the Abenaki culture, religion, and documented our language in dictionaries while embedded within our communities. During that time, it was reported to the Vatican, and I quote, "While we may properly regard this as too great a praise, we must admit that they possessed a nobility of character remarkable in a savage people." And another quote, "Their sentiments and principles of justice had no parallel amongst the other tribes, and that they were always known never to have been treacherous nor wanting in honor or conscience in fulfilling their word either given in public or a private treaty." The next biggest misconception we tend to hear is that we prayed to everything and anything, so we had multiple gods everywhere. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but the Abenaki have always been monotheistic as a tribe. We believe in a single creator that is not male nor female. We can not designate a gender to what we do not understand or know. That is why we call the creator Gisi-Nawaskwa, which means the great mystery of life.
Do we pray for the earth and all our surroundings? Absolutely. Indigenous culture and religious practices are intrinsically entwined with our environment and our physical place of being, and therefore it cannot be separated. When we honor, love, take care of, and pray for our planet and all beings that live on it, we are ultimately praying and caring for ourselves too. Creator gifted us with a wondrous place to live and made us the caretakers and stewards of Indakina. Through hours of sitting, watching, learning how our non-human relations survived, we learned patience, sustainability, longevity, and survivability as we developed respect for all of Creator's gifts and creatures. For 13,000 years, we lived in harmony with our environment, not just surviving, but actually thriving in a sustainable lifestyle.
We recognize the relationship between all living things and that we are completely dependent on each other for survival, which is why you hear us talk about how all things are related. Everything Creator has made on this planet has a purpose and a right to exist. It is our responsibility to understand our connection to the environment and all beings around us. We are not expected to completely understand the purpose of absolutely everything. That is why we have faith in Creator, because only Creator has the ability to know everything. However, that is why we have to be so careful of this planet and each other. It is imperative we learn everything on this planet is designed to be interdependent. We need to understand that when we alter our environment, whether it's from harvesting what we need to eat or the materials needed for the construction of new buildings, those acts change the future of plants, animals, and all of the things that share the earth we live on.
Simply put, every action has a reaction. When we do something in life, it's like dropping a pebble in the water. And that ripple we created continually grows as it spreads out across the surface. The ripple may be insignificant to us as humans, but that same ripple could drown an ant. Creator made that ant just like you and I, and that life is just as important as mine. All of nature is sacred, and who are we to destroy what Creator built? We are taught that Creator can fulfill every need that we have: food, clothing, heat, and housing. However, Creator can never satisfy human greed. Creator has already supplied us with healthy and wholesome food, sustainable clothing, heat and housing materials, and most importantly, clean air and water. We made a promise as Alnambak, as the original human beings, to protect and care for those gifts, so that they are there for the next 7 generations. This planet, this place is only on loan to us by the future generations. There is nothing more imperative than having our grandchildren's children understand the love we have for them than through our everyday actions, making sure that they have a clean planet to live, grow, and thrive.
We have been demanding environmental and social justice for our people since the 1600s. In the early 1700s, it is on record where we petitioned, in fact, one of my own relatives, petitioned the colonial government of Boston to remove a mill dam on one of our rivers that stopped the migratory fish runs. Many of you may remember the spring release of our documentary film, Swimming Upstream, Indigenous Environmental Justice for Our Waterways, where we explained how fish and shellfish were our top food resources and how the dam installation was starving our Indigenous people. These dams continue to exist, now starve all residents of the region by increasing water pollution and stopping the fish from spawning, which will eventually exterminate critically important fish populations. However, we continue to remain faithful to Creator's law and steadfast with our ancestors, dedicated to our promise to be the original caretakers of Nundakina. We continue to seek social and environmental justice through water and fishway restoration, removing invasive species, removal of dams, gaining water and estuary access for migratory fish, forestry management, the increased use of sustainable energy, and ultimately, we want to see the removal of the coal-fired Merrimack power plant in Bow. This power plant not only has adverse impacts on the Merrimack River, but it pollutes the air with ozone-depleting gases and toxins.
So let's stop for a moment and let's all take a deep breath together. That's a lot of inherited history for everyone to hear and begin to process. Inherited history is to receive or take over a historical narrative from a predecessor, where we had no active role in creating it, but carry the emotional weight with us anyways. I'm grateful that each one of us here and now are not responsible for the past. I am grateful that we can freely discuss the burden of that inherited history and how these discussions unite and bring us together as a people, as a community. I'm even more grateful that Creator blessed each one of us with the gift of choice and the gift of free will, and that we do not have to continue with the environmentally destructive ways of the past, but we hold the power to change and be better. To remember that everything Creator has made on this planet was done so with beauty and perfection.
Kisinawaswat recognizes that we are all human and will make mistakes. So it is a responsibility to seize these moments Creator provides, to correct any wrongs and try to restore the natural balance. This belief is firmly integrated and embedded not just in our religious practices, but within our culture as a people. Creator is forgiving and is giving us an opportunity to remember our original promise to be the caretakers of Nandakina and to repair and make amends where we can as quickly as possible. You cannot honor Creator if you are manipulating, destroying, and polluting Creator's greatest gifts, our environment and each other. We must learn from these experiences so that each of us can make better decisions in the future and not repeat the errors of the past. As we join you here today, we ask each of you to reflect on what you are doing daily within your own life to honor and protect the earth and show respect to all that Creator has blessed us with. What message will you be leaving for your next 7 generations? Will it be a world of clean land, clean air, and clean water? Or it will be chemically driven, toxic, and destructive, slowly leading to our own extinction? What message will you send, and what will be your legacy?
As we close, we ask you to join us in loving and protecting Mother Earth and all that Creator has loaned to us, and close with a land acknowledgement and stewardship statement. As we all journey through life, we wish to acknowledge the spiritual and physical connection the Pennacook, Abenaki, and Wabanaki peoples have maintained to Ndakina, our homelands, and the Aki, land, Awan, air, Nibi, water, Olakwikak, flora, and Awaasak, fauna. As Alnumbak, the original human beings, we ask you to acknowledge the hardships that continue to be endured after the loss of unceded Indigenous homelands. We seek your help to foster relationships and opportunities that strengthen the well-being of all living things as we all carried forward 13,000 years of Indigenous stewardship practices and traditions. Kitsi Oleoni Kitsi Nawas, Talmudikwa Damina, Olito Gowangan. We give great thanks to Creator, the great mystery of life. We thank you all that we remember still. Thank you.
Gisilini.
Thank you.
You got a magic spot.
I guess so. Wow, I didn't know I had that much energy. Okay, thank you, Paul and Denise, so much. That was beautiful. And we are so grateful for Paul and Denise to be here today and all of our Indigenous leaders and representatives. We are also grateful to our partner organizations, including the First Religious Society Unitarian Universalist Church here in town. They've been an incredible support and a big part of this event, and many social and environmental justice initiatives in Newburyport and the greater region. And one of the ambassadors of those projects is Reverend Rebecca Bryan, who's here with us today, and we'd like to welcome her.
Hi everyone, it is so incredibly good to be here. And just look around. Look at the beautiful land and water and sun and air and people and partners and sculpture and fire and music. We are indeed so blessed. So I just want to offer a couple of words and invite us into a prayer. But before I do that, I want to thank Creator, thank the Spirit of life and of love, the Creator of all beings who share Mother Earth, and to ask that we allow the peace that is the birthright of every creature to be with us now. What a gift it is to come together on these lands of the Pennacook tribe of the Abenaki people on this day here in the city of Newburyport, the second annual Indigenous Peoples Day celebration. We acknowledge that we join together with other cities and towns in the state of Massachusetts who honor this day and the Indigenous peoples who were here on this land first and continue to be here on this land. So in celebration and with humility, respect, and joy, I want to name and lift up that we come together with the cities and towns of Amherst, Aquina, Arlington, Bedford, Belmont, Boston, Brookline, Cambridge, East Hampton, Falmouth, Grafton, Great Barrington, Harvard, Holyoke, Marblehead, Mashpee, Maynard, Melrose, Newton, Northampton, Provincetown, Salem, Somerville, Stowe, Wellesley, and Newburyport in celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day. May that list continue to grow, and I apologize if I've neglected anyone. May our state be a place where Indigenous Peoples Day is recognized and Indigenous people are honored for their divine and diverse part of our interconnected web of existence. So I'll invite us now into a brief moment of prayer, meditation, and centering. Creator, God, mystery of all that was and is and shall be. We look at this world and we praise the diversity that is all around us. Thank you for the gift of relationships, of community, of connection with people, animals, and the land. Help us, Creator, to see differences and diversity for the strength that they are. Help us to listen and understand, to meet one another with wonder and anticipation and curiosity. Help us to love as you love, without expectation. Reveal to us ways of reconciliation. Guide us into right relationships with all living beings. Lead us to understand how Indigenous peoples have been and continue to be profoundly harmed by settler people and institutions and laws. Lead us to repent when we, as settlers, deny Indigenous people respect, dignity, fullness of life, and equality. Help us to listen compassionately to all, to speak humbly, and to act bravely. Help us to seek justice, peace, and reconciliation among all your children. Thank you, Creator and Spirit of Life, for the spirits of mercy, forgiveness, and resilience that are within us all. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Rebecca. We are so grateful to this city, which for hundreds of years has been a leader in social justice. From William Lloyd Garrison on, this city represents change and positive contributions of multicultural people. And we want to acknowledge the city officials that are with us today. Just a week ago, we had a flag raising ceremony. The Pulios graced us with their presence to raise their Pennacook flag above the City Hall. You might see it flying up there. And Mayor Sean Reardon was part of that ceremony, and we're so appreciative for his support. And also, just to reiterate, we are working on the Indigenous Peoples Place, which is going to be a project here at the waterfront in the expanded waterfront park. We want to acknowledge City Planner Andy Port. I see him right over there. You can wave if you like, and he's been a big part of this as well. And this is really exciting, and it's going to be a milestone project to acknowledge Indigenous peoples in a ceremonial and a monumental and historical way, a place of gathering, of learning, and of sharing. So we thank the city for their bold and courageous move to do this, and also for all of their support of Indigenous Peoples Day. And we want to welcome Mayor Sean Reardon.
Good morning. What a beautiful day here in Newburyport. I would like to thank you all for being here today and for inviting me to speak. Thank you to this event's organizing sponsors, Imagine Studios and the First Religious Society Unitarian Universalist Church. I would also like to extend my appreciation to the Sagamo, Paul Pulio, and Sagamoskwa Denise Pulio, our male and female head speakers today, for leading this program. Today we honor and celebrate all Native peoples, past and present, and come together to observe the second official Indigenous Peoples Day here in Newburyport. To that end, I want to begin by acknowledging the Native peoples of this region that includes the land we are gathered on today, including the Abenaki, Pennacook, Wabanaki, and Micmac. We acknowledge this as native land, and we express our sorrow for the history of forced removal of this land, as well as our gratitude for the use of this space today. We have the great responsibility today to honor the history, present and future, of the region's Native peoples, and to work together to protect and preserve this land for our descendants. The people of Newburyport care deeply about preserving this land in the face of the threats posed by climate change. We are proud of the work being done to expand and enhance the waterfront park that we are gathered on here today. This land is permanently protected as park space, accessible to the general public in perpetuity, including access to the water's edge. The city has committed funding to expanding this park through the Community Preservation Act. And this project will add new lawn spaces, access to the rail trail, and additional seating areas. The city is also discussing how we can honor the contributions of Native peoples in this new park, and is looking to advance plans for an area of the park that will be known as Indigenous Peoples Place. This can be a seating area near the water's edge, appropriate for ceremonies such as this in future years. And early plans include a fire pit style sculpture that symbolically represents the community gathering space of Indigenous peoples. We look forward to continuing these discussions on how to honor our region's Indigenous peoples as we work towards the shared goal of protecting this land for years to come. I am proud to be in a community that celebrates Indigenous Peoples Day and offers opportunities like this to educate all on the continued contributions of Native peoples here in our area. The displays of culture we witnessed today through music, dance, stories, and the spoken word will be a powerful symbol of the continued strength of the tribes here today. Thank you all again for being here today, and it's an honor to join you to celebrate this day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Reardon. Now I'd like to introduce Onega Wea, Gary White Wolf. Gary comes to us from New Hampshire at the moment, and he's going to tell you a little bit about his traditions and ways and lead us in some participatory ceremony together with the fire. And Gary spent a good part of yesterday setting up the circle that you see today, so thank you, Gary, for all your hard work. He also helped put these beautiful sculptures in place, which are the work of Joseph Gray. And if anyone would like to know more about Joseph Gray, there's a sign right outside the entrance here, and it talks about his sculpture work. It's also here on the Clipper City Heritage Trail. So please welcome Gary White Wolf, Onega Wea.
I'm honored to be here. I come from the West, but I'm here in the land of the dawn. My teachers, when I left the West, instructed me not to bring my traditions with me, but to learn from the people and the ancestors that first walked this land, the Dawn Land. I believe the actions being taken here are unprecedented across the nation. Our people have been living in the shadows for generations. I believe that the work that's being done here by these strong Native people are lighting a fire that I hope carries the light as a living example of the change that needs to happen across this continent. It's important for all of us to recognize one another as human beings. All one family, different colors. That's why there's 4 colors on the medicine wheel: red, yellow, black, and white. The 4 root races of man represented on an ancient symbol. In the time of creation, the 4 colors were put on the 4 corners of the earth, according to the legends I've learned. Each given an element of earth, air, fire, and water to learn by. And that in generations to come, we would come together and bring our lessons that we've learned. That time is now. America's called a melting pot. Let us find peace and harmony amongst the nations. Peace and harmony amongst the tribes. Peace and harmony amongst all living things. Harmony is taking care of, honoring, respecting, and loving all of creation. As a representation of the fire that's being lit here by these leaders of the people, these leaders have spoken words that are felt by Native people from coast to coast. It's a truth that's been spoken. Take it to heart. Carry it with you. There's nothing I can say to add to the beautiful sharing that these have shared with us. Thank you so much, and as a representation of change, I would like to light a fire, because fire is the element of change. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being the spark. I'm honored. The fire is central to the people. It's used in ceremony in many cultures. It's used to heat the stones for the sweat lodges from nation to nation. The sweat lodge for the native people is our place inside of a structure that is considered returning to the womb of Mother Earth. From there, we are in all directions. In all of those directions, we are connected to all things. This practice, this place of prayer, is sacred in many different tribes. Our religions differ, our languages differ, but the Pulios have spoken the core beliefs of connection to the Earth Mother. From all life comes from and returns to the earth, we don't own any of it. We can't take it with us. We're a speck of dust in the wind that is only here for a moment. We have had prophecies handed down across the nation that had to do with what I've spoken of, where we can come together as one people, bring what we've learned, and overcome our differences. As the Pulios said, we need to return to a way of living in harmony with this earth. They speak of the 7 generations, the prophets. Generations ago said the day will come when the ancestors will be reborn and return. The day will come where your bright-eyed children with yellow hair will be born knowing the way. We open the door to sharing our culture and our ceremonies, because it's time now, based on the prophecies, one of which had to do with the prophecies from White Buffalo Calf Woman. There was a time in the West with the Lakota where 2 hunters were out hunting for food, and a beautiful woman came walking across the plains, and the 2 warriors approached her, one of which had bad thoughts because she was so beautiful. And she said, "Come to me and do whatever is in your mind." And a cloud came down and surrounded them. And when the cloud lifted, the young woman was still standing there, and there was a pile of bones that was the warrior. And she turned to the other warrior and said, "Go, gather your people. Tell them I am coming, with the sacred teachings that will restore and carry balance for all people. And so he did return to his people, and the next day she did come. With her, she brought a sacred bundle that contained the pipe and a sacred hoop of balance and harmony, and 7 sacred ceremonies that were given to the people. And she did stay with the people and teach these ceremonies. And she traveled on. But when she left the Lakota people, when she walked away, she rolled on the ground one time and became a white buffalo. And she walked a bit and rolled again and became a yellow buffalo. And she walked and rolled again, became a red buffalo. And on her 4th rollover, she became the black buffalo. And she said, I will return. When you see the white buffalo calf be reborn, it will be the time of union for the people. It'll be a time of returning. In the late 90s, there was a white buffalo calf born. His name was Miracle. And people pilgrimaged from all over the nation to bring gifts and homage to the return of that white buffalo. So this is a time to teach our children, to share with one another, open our hearts, forgive the trespasses. Sometimes that's not so easy to do. But it's time to look in our hearts and quit dividing. It's time to look for unity, love, and peace. Home Tacriase, all my relations. This drum is a spirit drum. It's been awakened and it's been used in ceremonies across the country. The song is because of the name of this drum. This drum's name is Wolfheart. In the time of creation, the council was called by the creator of all the things that lived in the forest. And creator was speaking to the animals that lived in the forest and said, I'm preparing to create a new one to walk amongst you. But these new ones will be unlike any other. They will not be born knowing the right way to live. They will need a teacher who will step forth. The first one to step forth was the eagle into the circle. And the eagle says, I will teach the new ones. I'll teach them how to fly high and build their nest on the cliff, how to hunt and to fish. And Creator said, thank you, eagle, but these new ones, they will not have wings like you. But because you fly closest to us, you will be the one who carries their prayers to me. The next one to step into the circle was Bear. And Bear says, Creator, I'll teach these new ones. I'll teach them what to eat. I'll teach them the medicines from the forest. I'll teach them how to fatten up for their long winter sleep. And Creator said, thank you, Bear. But these new ones will be great in numbers and not live your isolated life, nor will they sleep through the winter. But you can be the teacher for their food and their medicine. And so the next one to step into the circle was Wolf. And Wolf says, we are many. We live in a pack. We honor our elders. We teach our young. We hunt when we must. We play when we can. We respect all life and take only what we need to survive. And Creator said, this is good. Wolf, you will be the teacher for the new ones. And so Wolf did live with the people, and they learned how to live in harmony and in peace. And when the teachings were done, Wolf said, it's time for me to go. But you know the right way to live in harmony and balance. But someday, you may begin to forget. So I want to give you this song so that when you begin to forget, you can call me and my teachings will return.
I'd like to say kwai. In our language, this is a pakoligon, a drum, and it's in the spirit of Nawaskwa, Molsum. So in our language, this would be Nawaskwa Molsum Pakoligon, meaning the spirit of the wolf drum. Kisilini, we welcome you.
Thank you, Onegawea, the Pulios, Mayor Reardon, Reverend Rebecca Ryan, and everyone who made this a very special opening ceremony for Newburyport's second Indigenous Peoples Day. And thank you to you all, the community, who are making this a special day. The rest of our program will start in just a few minutes. Excuse the feedback here. From the main stage over here, there's a complete schedule going to 3 o'clock. We have speakers, presenters, performers, so we hope you'll stick around. We also have information about Indigenous Peoples Day initiatives across the state, about the changing of the Massachusetts flag and seal, which is a derogatory image of a Native person. And there's information about that. You can sign a petition, and you can learn throughout the day. So thank you so much for joining us for this opening circle. Have a blessed day.